welcome to the Service Operations Podcast. I am your host, 𝗏𝗵𝗂𝗏. Our guests are from different industries and functions. They will share their experience, strategies, and the changing landscape to help you take the service operations of your business to the next level. Welcome, Rahul. It's been a long hide and seek to get you on this podcast, and I hope to have a great conversation with you today. So, for the
Likewise.
listeners, just a brief introduction of Rahul. Rahul has spent over 28 years and he has hands-on experience in retail banking, payment and settlement systems, and financial technology, and he has led ICICI Bank's digital initiatives, primarily, on the side of the payment systems. So over to you, Rahul. You can take us through your journey as well as, we'll talk about digitization as it stands today.
Great. Thanks, Satinder. I will give my brief introduction probably to set the context and break the ice, and then we'll take along as the conversation progresses. So, as you rightly said, almost 30 years now, and that makes me feel pretty older. With 30 years of experience, almost 20 years of that with ICICI Bank. And this whole digitization for me started way back in 2004-5. Probably even iPhone and Android were not invented, and we wanted somehow to migrate the transactions away from branches and away from call centers, and we wanted customers to do these transactions on their own, on self-service channels. So the digital is a new word, but we used to call these alternate channels, or probably just good old internet and mobile banking. That's how this journey
Direct,
started.
direct
Yes,
channels also.
correct. So by the time I left ICICI Bank, but in November 2016, 90% plus transactions, non-cash transactions in retail banking happened through digital channels. So that was a big transformation. In fact, we started calling branches alternate channels because if everything else didn't work, then probably branch was the last option for the customer. So that's the transformation we've seen. The big learning for me, of course, besides the evolving technology, and we'll not spend so much time in technology because that's not because I want to belittle technology, but because it's readily available. What is more important is what you do with technology, and that was a big learning I took in my 18-20 years at ICICI Bank. In fact, this whole digitization journey, we were probably, arguably one of the first banks. I'll not say the first bank, uh, which realized the potential of digitization, and we converted this whole digital from a cost center to a profit center. We started looking at how digitization can weave into core banking objectives, be it sourcing of new accounts, be it uh, identifying why your customers are going dormant, because a lot of banks, a lot of companies are chasing new customers all the time without really taking a pause and looking into their own portfolio to see existing customers, how are they behaving, are they transacting, are they maintaining CASA balances, are they generating fee revenue for the bank. How can you do cross sell? Now, cross sell and upsell are very probably hackneyed, and they are used so often that somehow the real relevance or importance of cross sell upsell gets missed by oft repeating these terms. But that's far more to cross sell and upsell, and which is where ICICI Bank invested at that point in time in business intelligence unit. Now you can't imagine a bank without a BIU supporting or buttressing the core business objectives, and that's the whole journey. I have been able to witness and directly contribute to converting digital into a profit center. That's and of course payment and settlement systems. It's a different chapter altogether. With formation of NPCI, last 10 years have seen a complete transformation of payments in India, and it may be probably a little bombastic statement if I say, but I'll nevertheless go ahead and say so. I have seen now, I've traveled a lot. I've been to outside Africa, of course, East Asia, Europe, America, US especially, not South America. And I can safely say we have probably the best payment infrastructure, interoperable digital payment infrastructure outside of cards also, where a customer probably who may not even have access to smartphone is still able to use and make payment electronically, instantaneously, in real time, interoperably through your payment systems like Aadhaar enabled payment systems. So that's something, that's a core infrastructure that we've created, and I think that's something which is replicable. especially in emerging economies. That's my broad learning in my past 2 decades of digitization.
That's quite a bit. So I can, fully relate to what you're saying, because while all this was happening on the technology side in the bank, I was on the other side, the customer piece. So I've seen, these steps happening very closely and also getting impacted by it directly, in dealing with the customers and the customer handling teams. ICICI Bank has been far ahead in technology as compared to many others. And now, when you step out of the bank, when you're in, you're so demanding. When you step out, you also feel that things that people are doing today are some things that we have done maybe even 10 years ago. Anyone who's been in that space would have like been soaked in all the work that you did. So what is one of the most project or some initiative that you love doing while working on digital technology?
Actually, this is a very difficult question for the simple reason that if I want to start writing a laundry list of the initiatives or
Yeah.
what we did, probably it will bore your audience to death because I can just go on talking about it. What I would probably like to digress a bit and kind of highlight a particular aspect of tons of things that we might have done, which is probably more relevant from especially the background where you come from, the customer experience and the customer delight. I think the big learning for us was converting all these digital channels into an omni-channel experience. So let me elaborate or give an example. When a customer walks into a bank branch or calls a call center or interfaces with a mobile application or internet banking application, or now this tablet banking is very popular. So somebody from a with a tablet from a bank comes to customer's house or office and helps customer open an account or take a loan. Somehow the banks still look at these digital channels as independent siloed customer interfaces, whereas in customer's mind he's interacting with a bank. So the way banks have structured themselves, the organization structure of a bank, branch banking will be headed by an independent person, call center will be headed by somebody else, digital channels will be headed by somebody else. So what experience customer gets an experience that I'm talking to XYZ Bank's call center limited, XYZ Bank's branch limited, XYZ Bank's tablet banking limited. He doesn't get experience XYZ Bank. And that's why, suppose if customer were to call a call center to lodge a complaint, and next day probably he were to walk into a branch for some transaction, and if he were to ask that branch staff, what happened to my query which I placed with the call center, he would say, oh sir, for that you'll have to call call center. I have no idea what transpired between you and call center. I think that's the big learning amongst all the projects that we've done to create that unified, uniform customer experience, so that customer doesn't feel kind of either neglected or being thrown to fend for
From one.
himself or one pillar to post. I think
Yeah,
if
yeah.
if banks are able to, and I think it will be incorrect to say that banks are not seized of this. Yes, banks are aware of this. Most of the banks have probably, if not 100%, substantially implemented this kind of unified interface, so that customers can
Hmm.
interact with channels across the bank and get the same experience, or
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
need to feel lost. I think that's one of the
yeah.
most important aspects of
And actually,
digitization.
while you're saying, and while you're saying this, what it really means is it's not just the interaction channels. It requires much more. It has got much more layers. So your workflow system,
Correct.
that is the CRM or whatever, everyone uses the same system. Then everyone has access to the same data, and then the data flows. So it
Correct.
it's not really a very simple exercise in a way. It's like a huge exercise, and it requires an entire organization to put in their best to make that happen.
Correct.
So I think the
So
challenge, sorry, yeah, please.
no, no, you complete. Then I'll give one example, one anecdotal experience.
Yeah. So see, that is very key. And when I speak to people who are in the service operations space, one of the things that people find very challenging is to bring everybody together on a common platform. People who have different objectives and goals in the organization, to bring them to a common platform to make these things happen.
Correct. So, as I was saying, the customer service or customer engagement. Again, these are buzzwords, and are thrown so oft repeated. So probably they lose the real crux or the meaning of it. But look at it this way: how many times you have searched a query on Google and Google didn't throw the result? Sometimes it's so scary that it feels Google is reading your mind and giving you the results what you haven't probably even constructed your search query properly, and Google has given you the response.
True, true.
So we talk about investment in call center, but now I'm actually questioning, why do you need a call center? Like, you go to Uber or Ola today, and you don't. It's very difficult to get across to the call centers. Probably because there are very few instances where you would need, to get in touch with their call center. So if it is FTR, first time right, then you are not looking at your failures. You're not looking at service recovery. You're not trying to see, okay, I may fail in my digital channels or those transactions, and in order to recover those transactions, I'll create an army of people who will try and
Yeah,
salvage that
solve the
situation.
problem.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what is most important is FTR, first time right. So if you're first time right of your digital interfaces, then probably there is no need for customer to make that effort. Otherwise, IVR, and people have, I don't know whether it's deliberately by design or by sheer indifference or ignorance. By the time you come across to a human agent where you can explain your pain, you already exhausted all your energies. If that IVR lets you come across to the human agent, you keep pressing multiple buttons, and they just don't understand. So IVR is substandard, suboptimal solution in my opinion. But that FTR, I continue to believe, is the most important way
Yeah,
to
I
handle
think you're absolutely right, because it's only when there is a failure that you need to go to somebody.
it.
I mean, that's one of the reasons. Of course, the other reason is at the time when you're taking a decision to buy a product. That's the time when you need somebody, and it's like it's a replica of how humans think. So
Correct.
when when you want to buy something, you want to consult a few people. So you need some intervention, and when some things go wrong, you need someone to either help you manage your
Correct.
victim mentality or the real problem, and that's when you need intervention. So yeah, so what you're saying is that the basic transactions that happen have to happen right, and the focus of the companies who deal with transactions or any product for that matter should focus on that.
So there are two, three aspects of it. First is this whole usability, the journey, right from the time customer has access, says, yes, I'm interested in a particular product or a service, or I want to lodge my complaint, or I need assistance for transaction, till the time he gets to the gratification page, the hurrah, congratulations, whatever, this is your loan, or this is your bank account, or this is your card, or this is your insurance policy. How are we allowing that customer to navigate? Is it so complex? Sometimes we get enamored by our own technology and say, oh, it's too complex. Customers may not be able to, understand my technology. I read it in my mind that I am not able to translate my technology to give customer the delightful experience. I can give an example. Say automatic transmission when you drive an automobile is far more complex piece of technology as compared to manual transmission. Shifting gears and pressing on the clutch pad, you ask me, it's extremely painful, physically tiring experience. Can any engineer say, oh, automatic transmission is a very complex technology, my drivers will not be able to use it? You will laugh, right? But you will allow your CTOs to get away by telling my technology is complex and customers are not able to use, which means I am not able to convert the technology so that all complexity remains under the hood, and customers can simply sit on the steering wheel and keep driving without caring two hoots about how the transmission is actually happening under the hood. I think that example should be kind of kept high up by all CTOs in all banks, and to see how they can simplify the technology. So if and my probably I'm not a techie in the classic sense of technology, though I have handled digital channels at bank for 20 years. I
Yeah, I'm
can't write a
surprised.
I
I'm
can't write a
surprised you're
single
saying that.
single line of C++ or Python or Java code. But
Hmm.
my argument has always been, if man can go to the moon, everything
Hmm.
on the earth is possible. So I can never take technology is
Yeah.
complex as an answer.
Yeah, I mean, it was like someone like me who's an absolute tech, I mean, non-tech person. I used to tell, when I used to talk to the technology people, I used to tell them, look, this is what I want.
Correct.
What you do
Absolutely.
behind, you
Correct.
don't tell me. I
Correct.
mean, I'm really
Correct.
not concerned with that,
Correct.
but it should come like this to me.
Correct.
And it's not
Absolutely.
just, for the customer is one person, but it's also for the people who work for the customer. Actually, that's like, I think sometimes a little neglected area, I can say that, because we are so obsessed with, first of all, the technology we have. So it's like, knowing 10 things, and all the 10 things that I know, I want to push it, I want to make a very complex kind of, yeah, I mean, it's like saying the best technology, kind of, to use that term, then I want to put in everything. That's one part, okay? The second thinking that goes is, how will the customer use it?
Correct.
So there is some thought that goes into, okay, how the customer will navigate the website or whatever, that app, etc. Now, what happens between are the people who need to then look at some 10, 20 systems, and then, they are struggling to find things to be able to help the customer. And even going by what you say, even though everyone's attempt will be to have first time right, okay, that will all, but there'll always be some spillover, something left that needs attention. And I think the employee portion is another one that needs to get right, especially in processes which are not fully automated.
So, a couple of points that you have raised, and I'll try and address both these points. One is the usability, and other is the level of automation. So, usability is extremely important, extremely critical. Again, it gets thrown multiple times, often during PowerPoint presentations, but very rarely I've seen it implemented. So, if like in case of, and I can keep taking that example because one of the simplest navigable applications I've seen, say Uber or Ola or WhatsApp for that matter. Who came and taught you how to use WhatsApp? Who taught you how to use Uber? So if somebody is saying, no, no, I offer a very complex service or a product and I need to educate my customers, and somehow they are not able to, understand how to navigate, I read it in my mind that I am incompetent and I am not able to create a simple navigable user experience which my customers can consume on their own. Now, if probably an undergrad driver of Uber can download that application, I am quoting that probably brand name. I don't know what's the policy, but I'm not promoting any brand, but I'm just quoting that as an example.
Yeah, yeah.
Taxi aggregator, if brand is
Oh, it
we
doesn't
are
matter.
averse to.
Actually,
Okay, so,
it's a
so
household name now.
okay,
Amazon. I
correct.
mean, we can't be so
So
Amazon, Uber,
absolutely. So
household names. Yeah.
when did these people send any training kits to you saying that, oh,
Yeah.
this is how you need to use my application? No, you intuitively learned it. So you self navigated, and that should be the gold standard for any service provider who wants to create a digital interface, be it on website or be it on application, so that customer on his or her own intuitively is able to navigate and complete that entire journey unguided, unaided. And that's the beauty. If that is how the usability should be done, and there are again, will not waste the time of this conversation. There are enough ways and means to actually undertake those exercises and ensure that customers are. And a lot of times, see, what happens is we fall in love with our applications or our solutions, and we say, oh no, this is the best way I would like to design my application. Sometimes we fall in love with our jargons, especially bankers make that mistake, but customers may not be enthused or excited with the jargons that you keep throwing about. So you should be relatable. You should be able to communicate, convey rather than confuse or confound or trying to impress. I think that's something which one needs to be very mindful of. And as I said, there are enough ways and means to ensure that customers are able to navigate your interfaces. But that's kind of, it should be like a hygiene. Unless you have completed those usability exercises, you shouldn't be allowed to go out to the market. And so I remember KVK used to say, whenever we went to him with the new, and at that was a period when a lot of new things kept happening and kept getting launched in the market. He used to say, don't make customer the QC, which means customer is not your quality controller. You don't expect,
Don't
you
make the
don't
customer do the
QC
user
doing your, yeah,
acceptance, user
your
acceptance
QC,
test.
or he
Yeah.
will start bombarding call center or branches with complaints, and then you realize, oh, this could have been fixed better upfront. So I think that's one lesson I have always kept very high in my mind, that customer is not your quality controller. You cannot ask the poor guy to do the quality checks for you. I think that's one important aspect. Second aspect of automation. That's the second part you touched upon. in my mind, you have automated your systems or you have not automated your system. There is nothing called partial automation, which means you have not thought through or your inability. First of all, of course, that's a challenge of the banks also, because if you see the journey, whole journey from Y2K to 2022 today, has been a very rapid journey. Banking probably hasn't evolved in last 100 years as much as it has evolved in last 20, and more so in last 10 years. It's a massive, rapid, radical transformation in the banking, how banking services are being offered to the consumers. That being so, the banks, especially those who started automating themselves from Y2K onwards, have a lot of legacy applications. You said that 25 applications need to speak with each other, and of course, for the question, especially for newer banks, and I advise quite a few, new generation banks also, where they don't need to struggle with this problem of having legacy applications, where you need to make the applications speak with each other. But today's technology of 2022 allows you to use APIs and create a very streamlined, very simplistic way of architecture, whereby your core applications, which could be your credit card core or banking core or loan core, through your channels can deliver that service seamlessly to the customer, no matter how many channels you have. So this whole omni-channel experience, or what we call STPs, straight through processes, are easily possible to be delivered through this API kind of or web services equivalent of technology, so that you don't need to worry about creating some kind of omnibus which will speak with 25 isolated disparate applications. I think again we'll not get into technology, but we'll try and see how technology is today allowing you to create these kind of seamless delivery systems, which is important, which is allowed. So just to complete that point, as I said, partial automation is not an automation at all. If you're telling customer, oh, now your bank account opening is fully automated, what that automation means, you submit an application online, you scan it, you upload it, and then everything else at backend I'll do manually, which is what I've realized. My recently son got admitted, and I don't know if I can name the college in an online interview. Let's say a law college in Pune, and people can now guess. They said now the admission process is online. And by the way, the CET is a common entrance test in Maharashtra, and all the documents, all possible documents you require to get admitted were already uploaded online. They were verified, and we thought now this process is only to verify the original documents. That day, we spent 7 hours waiting in multiple queues across 5 tables. And I said, "There is online in this. You wanted us to take, first of all, printouts of all the documents we uploaded, take 2 photocopies, and there were multiple desks, and different desks verified different sets of photocopies. And ultimately said, okay, all you're done now. This is the final line." I said, "Why? What is this line for?" They said, "This line is for online payments." I said, "Online payments? Why do I have to stand in the queue?" And finally, at the end of the day, we went there at 11 o'clock. At 7, I lost my patience. I started asking who is in charge, who's designed the system. Finally, I went up to that in charge and said, "Look, this is my background. I advise banks in India and abroad on how to digitize their operations. Probably you may not be able to afford me, but I'll give free consulting to you. What you're doing is a joke. This is not automation." But why
Hmm.
this happened? Because we thought a regular existing process, and we tried to create an automated, replica of the process which was inefficient in the first place.
Hmm.
So that's my second point. If you give me 2 minutes, I'll give you one,
Oh
not an
yeah.
example, not an anecdote, but a story.
Hmm.
It looks very simplistic but very important. There was a priest, and that priest had a cat, and he used to offer his prayers, worship in the temple. The priest also had an understudy priest, a younger fellow. And one day, as you would have it, the older priest, senior priest, dies. But before that, every time he offered the prayer, the priest's cat used to come and disturb his prayers. So one day, that older priest gets fed up with this cat, and he started tying up the cat to the pole so that during the prayer time, the cat wouldn't disturb his prayers and offerings. The younger priest, of course, very diligently, very sincerely, very seriously followed and copied everything that the senior priest was doing with utmost regard and respect to the senior priest. So when the older priest died, the trustees of the temple and the senior people in the village decided to make this younger fellow now the senior priest, because he was understudy for quite some time, and they felt confident that he'll offer the same praise. Now, as luck would have it, the cat also dies after a few days. Now this new senior priest, he is extremely scared. He thought the gods will not accept his prayers unless he ties a cat to the pole.
Yeah.
So he goes to the village, brings a cat, ties the cat to the pole, and starts offering. So he's relieved, he's satisfied. Now gods will accept his prayers. In our this automation you mentioned, 9 out of 10 times we find those cats and we tie those cats to the pole and we say that this is automation. Nobody ever questions why the hell should we tie that cat to the pole at all in the first place. So unless we
Yeah.
start questioning, unless we dropping those
Mm.
processes which probably would have served certain purpose at certain point in time, unless we have ability to question, and unless we are satisfied this process, this cat must be tied to the pole, we should destroy the cats and destroy the poles. We need to be able to destroy. It's like when you send a rocket up in the space, the boosters fall off, right? No rocket can ever get into the
Yeah.
orbit if they have to carry the boosters also.
Yeah.
We should be able to drop those boosters off. I think that's my
Mm.
big learn. Otherwise your
Yeah.
automation will never be complete.
Yeah, you're right. So basically, what I'm hearing you say is that incremental changes that we do in automation, which happen because see, one is that when unless you're starting from scratch and you're a new company, you will pick up the latest technology, right? But if you are an existing company and you're moving towards, because now, I mean, that's the next question I will come to, to you, that how do you, what is the kind of advice you give when, companies or banks, whoever's getting digitized? So what happens is that we do it in parts because we probably get systems in parts. Till that time, it is fine. But I still think that whenever we think of digitizing, we should start on a plain slate, on a fresh piece of paper, draw up a fresh process, and then automate
Right.
that.
Absolutely.
Because
What
otherwise, what you're saying will happen.
No, what happens is sometimes one is legacy, of course, but we can't keep blaming the legacy systems all the time. Second is our own orientation, and that's my personal experience, and not necessarily from my ex-employer, but even now I meet quite a few banks in India and abroad. See, I'll tell you one another example where banks err, and I'm talking typically of banks because that's where my experience lies. So I'm not saying non-banking companies what they do, but I'm not the right person to comment about how they do manage their operations. What banks do, they get again enthused by the vendors, and if you are a large bank, a larger number of vendors will keep calling on you. Now I ask them same question. Suppose if you were in the business of construction and you wanted to build, say, this head office, would you have gone to civil contractors and hired them and asked them to start digging the foundation without going to an architect and having designs and drawings? No, it's laughable idea, right? But you would go to a vendor, and that is why I refrained from calling. You said CRM, but I don't call it any application by name, because if you were to call CRM, I'll call SFA, I'll call ERP, I'll call BPM, business process management, I'll call document management system, because as a vendor, that's what I sell. But as a banker, I shouldn't be bothered about whether it's an SFA or a CRM or a BPM or a DMS or an ERP. I want an automation tool which will eliminate paper in the process, which will make in a STP process. So for that, I need an architect. I can't go to a civil contractor and start digging the foundation as this building starts taking shape, as you start laying the slabs over slabs. You keep realizing, oh, I wanted to have one more shaft for the lift, or I wanted to have one more stairwell. That's not how you do it in real life. But in your banking, yes, because the vendor is selling the solution cheaper, you go ahead and acquire it. Now you wonder, but I already have 20 other systems or applications of core. How do I, this 26th animal, do I link it with these other 25? And then you
Hmm.
blame your technology, you blame somebody else, but you never blame
And
yourself
it's
for not
also
having designed it
waste,
properly in the first place.
and it's a waste of resources, no?
Absolutely.
Resources, time, I mean, everything under the sun. When we're talking about automation of a complete process, if you might, what happens to say banks, or when I say banks, basically it means any company who wants to automate and whatever they are doing. Uh, does it mean that they require a lot of resources in terms of funds, etc., to change the entire systems? Or do you think, like now you are advising banks and other companies to on how to digitize themselves or their transactions? can they do it in part? Because it's like spending, I'm just using some numbers, say spending 500 crores versus say 10 crores or 30 crores.
No, first of all, it doesn't cost money. Frankly, that's not how I look at it.
That's very interesting. So you'll
Second,
have to explain more.
yes, and but we're not naming names or we're not giving any specific
No, yeah.
solutions. But what is important to note is when you talk about digitization or automation, you must define what is the success criteria. After what happens, what event has to happen for me to consider my digitization successful? I think that's most important, and which is what I start with most of the time, either the boards or the CEOs of banks. That when will you call your digitization successful? After you have purchased CRM, after you have purchased ERP, after you have got your CBS. Now most of the banks have CBS anyway, so that's behind us. But is that digitization? In my mind, no, that's not digitization. In my mind, it has got nothing to do digitization. It's like just if you want to say buy or you want to construct a sofa or some furniture at your home. When you are engaging with a carpenter, what do you talk mostly? You will be talking about the design of the sofa, the cushions, the softness, or do you talk about the chisels and the hammers and the screws and the nuts and the bolts? No. But in digitization, you talk about the CRMs and the hardware and the software and the active servers. Why? You should be talking about this digitization should help me reduce my TAT, which I take currently say 10 days to open an account, to 5 days, to 5 hours. I should take home loan disbursement stat from current 25 days to 2 days. I should be able to acquire 90% of my customers online. I should be able to disburse my loans, 100% of the loans online. Should that not be your consideration? Why are you bothered about CRM and the technology and the blockchain and the artificial intelligence? These are tools. These are hammers and the chisels and the nuts and the bolts. So if your success criteria is not right, then you will say, "Oh, I have CRM, I have ERP, I have But are you able to tell me what is the lifetime value of each customer that he's giving to you? Can you bucket all your customers into say logical buckets that this customer, say in Indian context, gives me 10,000 rupees of profit. This customer gives me 50,000 rupees of profit. This customer is a drain to me and he takes away 2,000 rupees of my profit per year. Are you able to tell me? Are you able to create a 360-degree persona of that customer saying that of the 10,000 rupee I get from this customer, the revenue or the bottom line, depending upon how evolved you are in measuring your matrices, I get say 2,000 out of his card payment transactions, I get 5,000 rupees from his NII, I get something from his cross sell revenue, I sell probably bank assurance. Are you able to tell that? No. Why are you worried about CRMs and artificial intelligence and the machine learning? So somewhere I always ask them this fundamental question: what is your success criteria? Having a litany of these solutions sitting on your in data center, is that what success is? Or success is you are able to reduce your TAT for opening bank account from 10 days to 1 day? If your priorities are not clear, if your success criteria are not clear, if you're chasing the wrong matrices, you will get the wrong results. So, in my opinion, 10 crore, 50 crore, 500 crore is really not relevant. It's an ROI. If this is the amount I'm investing, now how are you making money by digitization? You're reducing your TAT, right? You're improving your efficiency. You're improving your efficiency has two direct benefits. First, of course, is your cost number of man days. Suppose if you have five people working to open one account for 5 days, 25, simplistic example, 25 man days you expended. 5 hours you open that same account, even if you have not reduced five people, in 25 hours you completed that the same process. Second, you improve the customer delight. All other things being equal, he'll open account with you because it gets opened in 5 hours. So if you are able to now measure those success criteria, those matrices, then you look at this as ROI and not my cost. If its ROI is acceptable to your board and to shareholders, go ahead and commit it. If it's not, then keep only making PowerPoint presentations. That's how I look at digitization.
Yeah, but Rahul, now that, not now, you would have over a period of time, you would have met the leadership teams of different companies, right? So, why do you think they don't think in this manner? Nobody really talks, saying that this is what I want.
Correct.
That's one question. And it's not just, it's not just got to do with operations. It's got to do with, typically even the customer. Like one of the things that I talk about is the intent of the management what is it, what is the message for the people who are dealing with the customers? Is it cost reduction? Is it first time resolution? You don't want the customer, there can be various reasons, right? So why do you think the leadership, and like I'm talking about people who have they're not like first time leaders, they've been there forever, they don't talk this language.
No, it'll be. I don't know how to remain politically correct and still answer your question.
No, you can make it simple. Okay, let's just talk about a plain manager. Why does a manager
No,
not?
this not a problem to be solved by a manager. This problem has to be solved by the board and the CEO. I'm very clear about this. You can't blame a manager and a front desk staff saying that, oh, you don't adopt technology. No, this is not how it works. The commitment has to be of the board and the CEO. That is where the buck stops and business starts. So so long as the CEO is very clear in his or her mind as what she wants to accomplish, lot of times it could be the sound bites or quick fix. That also I keep telling, there is no silver bullet, I wish, or there is no magic pill. You just swallow one magic pill and tomorrow you're digitized. That is not how it happens. It's a journey, and that journey has to begin from CEO downwards, and you should keep asking about why we are tying various cats to various poles, and that's how this journey will have to be, and one has to be sincere in their endeavor to accomplish this. But whatever I'm saying today is not a la la land, or it's not Arabian Night stories. That has been implemented, and for each of these examples which I quoted, I can give multiple banks who have implemented this. So this is not unimaginable or a complete wishful thinking. It's only that either it is not a priority, or it doesn't give you a soundbite, or it's like harvesting versus sowing. Harvesting is always excitable, right? I always seen all the festivals, at least in Indian culture, are around harvesting. I haven't seen
Yeah.
any festivals around sowing, which is where the backbreaking work is. You have to
The
sow, you
real
have to
work is.
till the land,
Yeah.
you have to sow the seeds, you have to water it, you have
Hmm.
to weed out the unwanted plants. That's backbreaking work. Nobody celebrates that.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
if one is focused only on harvesting all the time, who will be doing sowing? I think
Hmm.
so. There are no ready
Yeah.
answers, but there are hard hitting answers. If these are palatable to you, you can achieve that. But if
Hmm.
you are fixated only on quarter to quarter profits, then
Yeah, I was
I don't
actually, yeah, I
I
was
don't know
coming
how.
to that actually, because I think these are changes which take time. Like even when I talk about cost reduction, and when there are these solutions that we talk about, they're not overnight solutions. I mean,
No,
overnight solutions are different. They're not, they're not sustainable. But any of these, initiatives need to be at least 3 to 5 years. At three
correct,
years is what I think is the minimum time one needs to actually take to really see good results.
correct. Which is
That
important.
is.
So, as I said, without having those success criteria properly defined and committed to, you
Hmm.
can't get into digging your foundations and then go along discovering how it will benefit you. So, that's not
Yeah.
the right way of digitizing. That's
So coming back to something that we spoke of before this podcast was on this, architecture piece that we wanted to speak about, and now I think we've laid the ground fairly fine. So we've kind of spoken about what needs to happen after the decisions have been taken. So what is your message? A simple, not the tech message, but an overall message on how this foundation should be laid. Like what should be the one or two things that people who take decisions keep in mind when they decide that what is the path they need to take towards more automation or digitizing, as we call it.
so. Yeah, at least the people I work with, where I am engaged directly, uh, the process starts once the board or the CEO is convinced and they're committed, and the timelines kind of are understood. As you said, 3 to 5 years. It's not 1 or 2 month story. Neither it is a 10-year story. So once you have a reasonable horizon in front of you of 3 to 5 years, which is the right horizon, uh, I insist on having those success criteria well defined, so that we know that this journey will be considered as a success if we accomplish this. Otherwise, everybody will question, why did we digitize, or we have CRM, now what? No, now that we have, we need to measure the profitability per customer, or the ERV, or the number of accounts shows online, whatever your success criteria. Then okay, I may need to commit these kind of resources. Once that is behind us, once those success criteria and the timelines are properly charted, we get down to the business of looking at all the cats which must have been tied to various poles. We start questioning why. We look at, in fact, substantial amount of effort goes. You'll be surprised, not many banks have a documented as these processes. Lot of times it
Oh, yeah.
happens as a word
No,
of
no, I
mouth,
fully
as
believe. I fully believe you.
correct,
In fact, most don't have.
correct.
I don't know who has.
Correct, correct. And the other discovery for me was the processes I learn in the head office on a PowerPoint presentation made by business heads are not the processes implemented on ground, which is what I do. So wherever I'm involved in automation or my team, we sit with the branch staff, the operations staff, and we actually walk the journey. We don't ask anybody to map the process for us. We map it ourselves, saying that this is what happened, no matter what your PowerPoint presentation process said, but on ground this is what happened. And we have actually, right from the time customer has walked into a branch to open an account till the time that account got opened in CBS, we have actually gone back to the management and showed them what process their bank follows, and they were amazed. And this is, they found it difficult to believe, but this is the documented process, witnessed process. And then that is your as is process mapping, which is what we do. Once we do that, we start converting that into, wherever possible, STP. So I say, unless it's your national law, which is act of God, or it's a regulatory guideline, which again you may push envelope with a regulator, but today you can't implement. Other than these two, we question everything. We question all cats. Just because somebody says no, in my opinion it shouldn't be done, unless there is a written black and white regulatory guideline, we start questioning that. And somehow in India we have covered a lot of ground in terms of e-signatures and Aadhaar based OTPs, or KYCs. So a lot of other countries are really fascinated with this. So the resistance within the bank's compliance I've seen, especially when I work outside India, is much less today, because in India we've been able to accomplish that. So unless regulator or your national law prevents you, we start, like wet signatures especially, which are very critical in India because of our e-signatures and are considered as a part of digital signatures as per IT Act of 2000. But different countries may have their different legal framework, and to that extent, you have to remain within that framework. But rest everything, we try and automate and try to create as many STPs as possible. And then those designs, the entire architecture, the design will include not only the process flows, it includes the user interfaces, the wireframes, what we call. It includes, what kind of messages and alerts customer will get. A lot of times people make mistake, they focus only on what we call happy scenarios. But what happens in case of error scenario, sad scenario? My account got debited, my biller account didn't get credited. Because again, I don't want to waste time of this conversation, but 10 things can go wrong between my account debit and biller account credit. Have we considered each of these 10 things, the technical declines, the timeouts at each of these? What is the service recovery mechanism? What is it I'm trying to do if CBS is not responding to me? Do I sit down and start crying if CBS is not responding, or do I reverse the transaction, or repost the transaction, or query the CBS? Again, a multiple solutioning. But point is, we have to get down to the brass tacks and find out how we can ensure that seamless end-to-end process. So either my account debit, biller account not credit has to result in, after some time, biller account credit and I getting confirmation, or my account credit and saying that reinitiate the transaction. That's the only two options. You can't make customer run from here to there. Oh sir, we'll have to check what happened. No, that is not customer's responsibility, it's your responsibility. And again, it's not call centers being enterprising to discover what happened. Your system should have ability to generate logs and data, so that all customer interfacing staff is easily able to access those logs and tell customer what the status is, if he were to call you at all, assume your FTR failed. So that's where we get down to those levels. Now messages, the classic example for me to give how messages confuse you is error 404. When you try to access a web page and it's not available, it says error 404. I can guarantee, at least where we work, 90 out of 10, 100 messages are error 404s. So what do I do as a customer? I get, error 404, equivalent message. So messages, we actually create syntax of the messages. We say messages must have two parts. One is the status, what is, you must communicate to the customer. Second part of that message is call to action. Now that this has happened, what am I supposed to do? Error 404 cannot be an error message. You can say, oh, this web page might have been removed. Probably you retype or check your spelling of URL whatever, or this page doesn't exist anymore, sorry. So that is the way your messages and alerts need to be communicated. So we go down to that level of brass tacks. We create those wireframes, we ensure that the usability is conducted, live customers are given mock tasks, and their behavior is observed, video recorded, and we also create test cases. So UATs, all the negative scenarios, all the happy scenarios, all the desired responses for each of these test cases. We create business rules for you to create those BREs, business rule engines. We create master tables, because again, if you have legacy applications, your different
Mm.
masters have different data. Suppose
Mm.
district names, I will write
Yeah.
Pune in one master and Pune in one
Pune.
master, and then
Yeah.
Pune never match. So
Yeah.
that level of detailing, but again, I can go on and on and on. But that's
Yeah.
how we help them auto. That's the
Mm.
automation, and
Yeah.
then test, then move to production, and
Mm.
live your life
Yeah.
happily ever after.
So, so two things actually I picked up and they're very dear to me, and that's why I will just repeat them for the sake of it. One of them is this process thing. So, one of the first questions I ask anybody is, do you have a process? Starting point, or is it that you're just doing it and you've been doing it over a period of time? And the next thing is, did you follow the process? So first of all, you need to have it, and second is you
Correct.
need to follow it, and there are gaps in both these. One is you
Correct.
don't have, second is you have something and you're doing something else. So these are, I think these are very basic, but these become habits. Unless it's in the culture that for everything that goes right or everything that goes wrong, if you check these two boxes, I'm sure lots of things would fall in place, technology or otherwise. And the second thing also, which is very important, is this, layering. So when you are talking about the process, you're talking about everything in the process, in the sense that, right from say getting an request from the customer, to dealing with his papers, to sending him messages, to telling him what, when it goes wrong, what will happen. So there are all these layers. I think what happens in existing companies, and of course banks also, is that each piece is looked at separately, and unless you look at everything together,
Correct.
you'll never get that
Correct.
perfect process for the customer.
Which is where we come in. So for more information, visit www.digitaldimensions.tech. I can do
Yeah,
some
I'm sure.
advertisement for my for
Oh,
my
that's
business.
okay. I mean, I think
Yes.
people would know you enough. So, Rahul, it's been actually a very interesting, a discussion with you. And what the best piece that I've picked up from what you have said is that we don't really need to make massive changes in, in our technology systems, and get all these pieces which are sold in terms of a CRM separately, and get them, first of all, buy them
Correct.
separately,
And
and
then
then
stitch
try
them.
and put them together, and then get all, and it has a heavy impact on the users
Correct.
within the company, because every time you make a change, you're making them change the way they do things. And
Correct.
while everyone loves change, this kind of change without purpose, the other thing that you're also saying is that if the management intention is very clear on what they want, and that is passed on to the people who are going to use those systems or work on them, I think it must be adding and making it easier for people to accept the change, rather than, how it is when
Correct.
two systems, when you're transiting from one to the other.
So
Yeah.
see, organizations also, I've seen one thing, are same as your families. All of us know that children do what you do and not what you say. Somehow, in organizations, continue to believe that the junior staff is expected to do what the senior management says. But they're too smart. They will always do what the senior management does and not what senior management says. So the moment you, whether it's for our current context is digitization or automation, so we'll stick to that. But they will see what kind of automation or what kind of digitization happens in the CEO's office. If CEO is having tons of papers sitting on the desk, and he keeps talking about digitization, then it all comes across as pompous claim.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You're right. So, Allah, just like many other things, I'll just tell you, I spoke to somebody else. I had a conversation, another podcast, where my guest was talking about that the leadership has to be chief repetitive officer. So, which means that they have to give a consistent message,
Correct.
all the time and keep repeating it in different ways. And that's how it goes right down till the last person, and then they start, believing
But
it.
as I said, more than saying, they need to do it.
They have to do
If they
it.
do
Yeah.
it, then don't have to say it because
Yes.
everybody sees them doing it. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
much easier to communicate if you do it.
And the other thing also which she spoke about was that a change can start from the top,
Yeah.
or it can also start from down. So she's saying that many times, the push from down is so
Correct.
much that the leadership is forced to make,
Correct.
those
In
changes.
fact,
So
I will give you an example. One of the largest banks in the country today, public sector bank, actually has set aside a kitty funds for investments in startup ideas. What they do, they invite their own staff to come and make presentations for innovative ideas, fintech ideas, and those ideas which get shortlisted, the staff is encouraged to pursue and complete a prototype, not again a PowerPoint presentation. They are taken off their regular roles. He could be a teller for all you know, and they're given 6 months and certain budget. Within that, they have to create that prototype, come back and present that prototype, and those working prototypes then are let out in the market as commercial launches. To buttress that point that you said, that there is already enough talent and knowledge available within the organization. You don't always need to hire consultants to, kind of somehow give you that magic pill. Provided you are sincere enough to listen to the ground.
yeah, you're bang on there, because listening is what we don't do really,
Yeah,
because all are the people who are facing day to day things are the
correct,
people who know
correct,
best,
correct,
and we don't
correct.
listen to them. I know, that's the catch. So, Rahul, we've had a nice, really enriching conversation and a lot of takeaways from what you have said. So, if there is some message that you want to, give in conclusion, please.
No, no, no message. I am not a priest. I don't give sermon, but
And no cats.
no, 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 no catch. But only one thing I can say. I mean, this is more reflection about my own attitude to life. If you're passionate about something, do it. If you're not passionate about it, just get out of the way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will only end up making a mess of it. So that's
Hmm.
that's all I can say as a concluding remark.
So thank you so much, Rahul. And I'm sure when I have a subject where I need in-depth knowledge, I'll come back to you.
Anytime.
And thank you once again
You're
for your
most
time and
welcome.
for sharing your experience.
Likewise. Enjoy talking to you. Thank you.